Hi, I'm Dr. Moby the Explorer, and I would like to share with you one of many docuseries. The docuseries are created conversations between myself and some of my good friends who were born outside of the United States. They're going to share with us their perspectives about African Americans prior to their migration and their perspectives in relationships now that they're here in the U.S. I am going to ask them several questions. It is an episode, so I need you to grab your popcorn and grab your listening ears. Come on and join us as we do what? We're going to grow and glow together. Hello, beautiful, blessed people. Welcome back. I'm Dr. Moby. For those of you who are returning, I thank you for coming back to watch this great episode, and I hope that you enjoy it. For those of you who are new, welcome, welcome, welcome. Today is special to me. This interview tonight, or let me say conversation, I won't call it an interview. It's a conversation between myself and one of my African friends. The purpose in this conversation is for years I've had an opportunity to talk to various Africans living here in the diaspora, as well as those living on the continent. I've heard multiple times, and it wasn't meant in a malicious manner, but I've heard statements such as Blacks in America, Native Blacks don't have a culture. I've heard comments from African Americans or Native Blacks, and I'll interchange both of those words because there are some people who will prefer Black, there are some who will prefer African American. But native to this country, who, when I say native, I mean who were brought from Africa or stolen from Africa here in the US, to the US. So they were enslaved. One of the things that we know, and I know, and you will hear me say one of the things, because I may not know a lot, but there are a couple of things that each video I share, I think I may know. And one of the things that I know is that when we were brought here and stolen from the continent, we all know that there were various ethnic groups brought to the US. And from there, we were stripped of our African culture, and it was the Native Blacks who created their own culture. So when you hear me say culture, I mean, and the definition of culture would definitely be behaviors, customs, and beliefs that are practiced by any group of people. And that is what I am talking about in my videos when I talk about culture. And that's generally the definition that you will hear. So again, I'll just say that it is the behaviors, the customs, and the beliefs that are practiced by a group of people. That's culture. And so when we think of Black culture, before I begin the interview, I think I just kind of want to share this little piece. When we think about Native Black culture, if you can just start with something so simple as music. If you've ever heard of ragtime, if you've ever heard of jazz or blues, and especially in modern day hip hop culture, that's a culture in itself. But when you think about hip hop, that all started from Native Black American culture. Language. During the Harlem Renaissance, there was a language that was used known as the Harlem Jazz. We have slang that we use today. Ebonics, that is all language that is from and a part of the Black culture. Let's talk about food. Usually we hear soul food as being a culture that is associated with Native Black Americans. But if you think about Creole food, if you've ever been to Louisiana, Creole, that is a food that is part of the Black culture. One of the other things that is different is dependent on the geographical location. So if you travel from the East Coast to the West Coast to the South to the Midwest, you will find different foods that are associated and date back to when we first were brought to the US that are all a part of Black culture. Collard greens, barbecue, the way we fry chicken. And again, if you've ever had red beans and rice, that's all a part of that Creole Black culture. So we've talked about language, we've talked about music, we can even talk about literature, right? So there are literature, especially in the Harlem Renaissance. We had great people who were part of the literature. So Zora Neale Hurston is a person that a lot of people know. And so that is a part. Family reunions, when we get together as a family, that is Black culture. So I wanted us to be on the same page when you hear me say multiple times on my channel, and some of the conversation that Dr. S.A. Will and I will have, will be dealing with culture as well. And so that's how we're defining culture. And the hopes, the hopes, the hopes. I've said it in my other two videos, so if you haven't had an opportunity to listen to them, I'm going to say, please listen to the first two videos. They won't take a lot of your time, but they'll kind of help you to understand this channel and my mission and my goal and a little bit about who I am. So one of the things is that I'm hoping is that we can start to understand one another better as it pertains to Native Black Americans, as it pertains to Africans that are here in the diaspora, and other Blacks that are here in the US from other cultures. And this conversation that I am going to have tonight with one of my dear friends, he's an educated brother. He is so wise, so wise. And so I am super, super excited. I don't want to introduce him. I would like for him to really tell us a little bit about him, because I can go on and on. I learn from him daily. When we have our conversations, I'm constantly learning from him. And it is my hope and desire that you can learn from him as well tonight. So I am going to allow you. Please, Dr. S.A., thank you and welcome to my channel.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm originally from Africa. I identify myself as African. And for me, it doesn't matter where you put me in Africa, I'm African. I've traveled extensively in Africa, and I've, I speak a lot of languages, African languages, and that's why I identify myself as African.
Is there a certain area that you're more familiar with? So as we're having our conversations, you may lean more toward your experiences as it relates to one geographical area in Africa.
For the most part, Central and Southern Africa, especially Southern Africa.
Okay, Southern Africa.
South
Okay,
Africa, Lesotho, Swaziland, Botswana,
okay,
Zambia, Malawi, Zimbabwe.
okay.
Familiar with those areas.
Okay, so your answers tonight, and you are well traveled, and that's another thing that I love about him. So I can go to him and ask him questions about various countries because he is very well traveled. And so his expertise comes from not just being an African here in the U.S., but he is very well traveled and he knows about a lot of various cultures. So let's dig in. Let me kind of ask you the very first question. Before you came to the U.S., what was the perception that, if you had a perception, about Black Americans?
Growing up in a segregated Africa, and the, what we were told as children about African Americans was that they didn't like Africans. When I got an opportunity to come here, I didn't have any perception. I didn't have any expectation. Just like when I go to another country, any community, I don't have any different expectation because, first of all, I'm looking at people and I'm going to respect the people for who they are, what they practice, and what they believe in. So, with that, I came with an open mind and then just learn from the people that I was going to live with.
And I ask that question because often, and you touched on it. I have friends from different places in Africa who I have heard them say they were told not to associate. Their children were told not to associate themselves with Black Americans once they came here. On the university campuses, a lot of African students have said they were told that Black Americans are not their friends and they shouldn't really associate with them. So that is why I asked that question, which kind of leads me to the next question. Because you did not let that narrative influence you when you got here, did you form a perception? Did you uh, have relationships or friendships with other Black Americans?
I'd like to respond to the statement that some Black Africans come to America and they're told not to associate with African Americans.
Okay.
That situation is found anywhere.
Okay.
Even within Black Africa, there are rich Black Africans and there are poor Black Africans. And some rich Black Africans, they tell their children not to associate with the poor Black. So that distance is there wherever you go
Okay.
in the world. So, having said that, then coming to the situation in America, you those people that say don't mix with the African American, find out about their background. Most likely they have that background. They come from rich families that told their children not to associate with others. Some of them is denial, being a black person. They think they're just black by color, but inside they're white because they, whatever they practice, the way they were brought up in a white culture. So they might not identify themselves as black because of what they believe in, as opposed to what the color of their skin is or where they come from. So the other part to that is that people that have traveled a lot, this is what happens. You are used to meeting people from different cultures. So as a result, when you move from one place to another, there is that excitement that you're going to learn about different people from a different culture. So perception is swallowed by the excitement that what am I going to learn today? It's just like there was dinner at grandmother's house. I'm excited about what am I going to try today? What is it going to taste like? It didn't matter the environment they were in, but I was just excited that what am I going to try today? So the same thing with me. I was just excited that I've never been in this part of the world. So what is awaiting of me that side? So I was excited, and part of it is wanting to learn about other people. And when you learn about other people, then you start to see some common threads, common things from one culture to another. And then you realize that sometimes the difference is just a geographical difference. If you grew up where in the village where you grow corn and rainfall comes and then you plant the corn, it grows. If you move from there to a desert area, if you try to plant corn, you're not going to be successful. So you have to change a little bit. But it doesn't mean your agriculture way is changing. You're just changing to planting sorghum or something that can grow well in the desert. That's the same thing with the culture. People might have moved here and there. It's up to you to have that inquisitive mind to try and find out what is their way of life like, and what informed this way of life. What is it that I believe in, that I see in this culture?
Yeah, I like the analogy that you gave about the corn and having the right environment in order for it to grow. And I think what I heard from you is that you've had the opportunity to be in the right environments in order to grow. So you said perception is followed by excitement, and because you've traveled, you've been eager to learn about various cultures, and so your traveling prior to coming here, I think, allowed you to come here and be open to learning and building relationship with other cultures. Because the thing that I love about you is that you have friends from everywhere. And I think that only comes through having an open mindset, and your analogy, the right environment in order for the corn to grow. You've been in the right environments in order for your mindset to grow. Would you say that I'm accurate on that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay.
Absolutely.
Because I have often said to you, friend, that you are so different. And I've often said, how do we clone you? um, so tell me about your your friendships with other blacks that are in the US and abroad. So I'm not just talking right now about black Americans, but I think you even have friends that are from islands that are black. But what do you think are some of the challenges as well as the benefits? So if you want to go with the challenges of having these relationships or building relationships, what are some of the challenges? And then if you could just kind of touch on what's the benefit?
I'll start with the benefit.
Okay.
The benefit of mixing with other people is learning about other people's way of life, learning about what they believe in, learning about their customs, learning about their routines, everyday routines. Because if you're going to live with people, diverse group of people, you have to learn their routines so that it doesn't become a problem. Because if you don't learn other people's routines, cultures, customs, and beliefs, that brings about conflict. So once I got here, I wanted to learn all I could about people. And once my friends found out that I was interested in learning about their cultures, their beliefs, their routines, eventually they started asking me questions. Say, "Oh, you're interested in our beliefs, our cultures. We want to know about yours."
Mhm.
So that way, I didn't impose my culture on people. I wanted to learn, and eventually they started learning from me. And once I started explaining and narrating my own growing up and culture and customs, my social setting from Africa, then we start seeing some similarities. You say, ah, that's the same thing we believe in.
Mhm.
And once we started identifying common threads, then it started, our friendships, it started binding to a point where I might say a word differently because of my accent
Mhm.
without feeling any kind of judgment that they're going to judge me any kind of way because they've realized that this is the environment I come from.
Mhm.
So there's some level of acceptance because we've understood each other very well. We've found the common thread. And some things are not going to be common. There's some things that are going to be unique. So for those things that are unique, instead, instead I become more fascinated about those things because I'm adding on to my toolbox of cultural things that I'm picking up everywhere I live with people with different cultures.
You said something, you said so much. I'm trying to unpack it all. One of the things I want to make a comment on is I hear my fellow sisters and brothers that are Black Americans say, um, how do you understand? I can't understand someone who has an accent. Can I note this right now? All of us, everybody has an accent. In America, there are different accents. If you live in the South, you have a different accent than someone who lives in California. If you live in New York, you may have a different accent than someone who lives in St. Louis. And St. Louis, where I live, especially, has a very unique accent, which we're known for. When we say her and car and there, everybody has an accent. But what I hope and encourage people, and I say encourage often, people to do is to listen. If you really try to listen and be respectful, that we don't all talk alike, we don't all sound alike, dialects are different, even being from the same country, the same city, even the same neighborhood, we all have an accent. But it's time that we train our ears and try. And when you don't understand something, it is important on how you ask. Can a person repeat themselves without getting frustrated or being disrespectful about it? So I had to mention that about the accent piece.
I
The
think
other,
I think we have that conversation because the world has not accepted every culture at the same level. There's no equity in the acceptance of people's cultures.
Mhm.
So I can I can go around the world with a British accent. It will be fascinating to a lot of people to hear. But
Mhm.
if you and I went there and I went with my African accent, you went with some different kind of Southern accent,
Mhm.
then it becomes an issue
Yep.
until we get to a point where the Zulu culture, customs, traditions are equally as accepted as the British culture's accent and everything, then we're not going to be talking about culture. I mean, we're not going to be talking about accent
Accents.
in a negative way. We will talk about accent as an addition to the world cultures.
That is exactly right. And it kind of frustrates me sometimes. You know, there are times when people I'm talking to will say, "Come again, what did you say?" Because I know there are times when you may not hear me because I may be singing, sounds like I'm singing or something. So you're right. Equity, that's important. You also said you came eager to learn. And I want to ask you if you could just think about it for a minute. How do you suppose we can start to learn? Like, what, how can you advise someone on how to spark the interest or want to learn about a different culture? You know, what advice could you give to them?
First of all, somebody has to respect, understand, and appreciate their own culture
Mhm.
for you to want to learn somebody else's culture. If you don't accept yourself, your culture, your tradition, your beliefs, your routines, then you have a closed mind. You can try to understand somebody else if you don't understand yourself. Go figure yourself out first before you can figure me out. So that's the first thing.
You say go figure yourself, right?
Yeah, go figure yourself before you can figure me out. So the second thing is that life is a journey,
Mhm.
and life is a collection of stories that inform who you are as a person.
Mhm.
And wherever you go, that's your connecting piece to different cultures. You understand the journey you've been on, and everything that happens, you can relate to your journey. It might not be 100%, it might be 10%, but at least you have something to start from.
Yeah.
You have something to work with. So when you say something or do something, right in my mind, it takes me back in history on my journey and say, oh, I recognize this. It might not be exactly, but I recognize this. Let me see if I can reconcile this and see if they're the same. That's where learning, uh, that's when learning happens. You know, even in those of us that are teachers, we say when you teach children, you start from the known and transition to the unknown.
Mhm.
So start with whatever happens, reflect on your life, and you will have a better understanding of other people. You want to learn about other people once you have made that connection. But without a connection, you don't even know where to start from because you haven't taken time to know yourself, your culture, your customs.
And you know why? You know that now that you're saying that, that is why I think so many of us reject. Um, I'm going to say Black Americans reject Africans from the diaspora that are here, and vice versa, Africans rejecting African Americans, because I think we have been um, conditioned to believe our cultures are not valued. And I think we don't, especially some Black Americans, we don't know enough about our own culture that it is very difficult to have a desire to learn someone else's. But again, I said in one of my videos, and I truly believe it, and then you came on here and said the very thing that I believe. But when we travel, no matter if it's out the country or to different states, I think you have this, you form an appreciation for other cultures. I think that begins the journey of discovery for self that you said, you know, we definitely need to have, reflecting on our own life. And traveling for me has become that reflective piece. Often when I'm traveling, I sit down and take time in the morning wherever I am, and I write a spoken word piece about that place, or I journal about the place that I've been. And I generally take notes about the culture, if I'm taking a tour, if I'm learning something new about that place and the people. I'm journaling about it. I'm writing it down on my, you know, my cell phone, um, so that I can put that in my memory bank. And I do reflect on my experiences and who I am. And that is what I think has given me a desire to want to learn about others. So I definitely agree with you. So I want to say, I want to ask you just two more questions, and then I've taken enough of your time. You mentioned cultural similarities. If you could just give one example of how you see um, a similarity from um, the Southern African parts as it relates to Black Americans or Blacks in the Americas. What just one similarity?
Food is one of them.
Mhm. Mm.
It's the same. It's just different spices that we put because again, geographical uh, position, because of the environment you're in. I mean, you don't have South African spices, so you make do whatever is here. But but the way food is cooked is the same. It's the same thing. How we look at family, that family value is one of the very important thing that I have seen around Black people everywhere I've been in the world. That's that appreciation for family unit and that protection for our children having experienced what we have experienced in life is the same. I might be from Africa, which is a black continent. Let me put it that way. It is a black continent, but it's still we have a lot of Western influence that is destroying family culture, family values, especially with the students children growing up now. Now, I'll give you an example. A friend of mine asked me and said, what do you see of Africa 50, 100 years from now? And my response was, if we're not careful, Africa is going to look like England. It's going to look like London. It's going to look like New York. It's going to look like Western world because what Africa is going through now is a fight. It's a fight for our own cultures and traditions. And the more we fight for our cultures, traditions, and routines, the more the fight intensifies. For those people that have relaxed the African way of life, they don't have to fight as much. So eventually, the few that are still fighting for African culture, traditions, and beliefs, they're going to get tired, they're going to get killed, they're going to get sidelined, they are going to be forced into poverty, into submission. And
Mm.
once that happens, then the Western culture will be planted in there for good. And at that point, there will be no more fighting because the objective is achieved.
Mm.
Africa has become a Western country, so no more fighting. That was my response if we're not careful.
If we're not, and that is why it's going to take people like you and I to make sure that we are connected so that we can go back to the continent, and people that have resources and skills so that we can go back and help develop instead of just depending on Western nations and Eastern nations to develop Africa so that it doesn't turn out like you said.
We need we need to work together, find that common thread,
Mhm.
and work together. And our biggest our biggest fight is to fight for recognition. Our culture is being recognized exactly the way the British culture, the English culture is recognized, the French cultures, and everything at the world stage. Once you've recognized, once Africa gets recognized, then what is going to happen is we're going to be at the point or at the level where we can freely say that's not right. So if we don't promote African culture, African language, every, and everything about Africa, we are always going to come short when it comes to negotiating, even with our own riches that are in Africa. You can't negotiate because you are a second class continent placed there to be exploited. We have English taught in Africa. We have French taught in Africa, Spanish, Mandarin, the Chinese language taught in Africa is part of the curriculum. But here we are, you and me, black people, speaking in English. We should be speaking in Twi or something. Because of that, and that ground that is not leveled, it opens Africa for exploitation. But if it's leveled, then Africa will say, Britain, you're trying to exploit me. No, I'm going to Nigeria there to sell my resources because we now at the same level. So nobody can say, well, we're going to stop the funding going to your country because you being hard to negotiate with. So we're going to hold all the resources coming to your country. That won't happen if the ground is level. And we're not asking for equality, we're just asking for equity. So
And it's
it
going
won't
to,
it won't matter how much, and how many resources black people in diaspora put in Africa. If the ground is not leveled, if our culture is not sold, those resources that black people in America and England send it to Africa, they're going to end all the way right back in America through corruption, exploitation, and everything. Because African Americans have been investing in Africa. I know that for sure.
yeah.
But we have to sell our culture, because whoever sells their culture, their language, their traditions, they control the world.
That's a good thought.
We don't control anything because we haven't sold our culture or language. The only time that we sell our culture and our language is for amusement. People come and pay to watch and leave. And somebody from the West, the powerful person, is coming to get even the resources that you put in for amusement to take it out again. Because the ground is not level.
And it's not going to happen overnight, but I think we can start. There are things that we can do. And I think it's going to take the effort of Blacks in the diaspora as well as those on the continent. And my hope is that we can start first with understanding one another so we can see the benefits and creating communities so that even Blacks in America, given the climate in America, you know that you will have somewhere we can go back home. And even if we don't, and we're not ready for that yet, my channel is about us understanding one another, clearing up some of these misunderstandings and misconceptions that we have so that we can build a strong community together, a community that provides resources for us so that we don't have to depend and lean on anyone else. And that needs to be the same as what I'm hearing you say, even for the continent. And you're saying another way that if we haven't thought about it is to sell the culture and the language, which is true, which is so true.
So even within the American context,
Mhm.
you know, I agree totally that we need to connect, we need to understand each other, we need to work together to improve Africa and the lives of Black people in diaspora as well.
Mhm.
But right here, African Americans need to be given a platform where they don't have to fight for their existence within America.
Mhm.
You see, that's where the issue is. So so George Floyd is killed. So all the energy now is about, oh, they're killing us now. What are we going to?
Mhm.
You we forgetting about the economic conversation we have to develop Africa because we're fighting for survival, our existence here in America.
Yeah.
If within America the ground was leveled where African Americans feel comfortable and are included in the economy, politics, and everything here, then that bond with Africa is going to be much stronger. And I can give you an example. That's why the bond between America and England is strong. It's very, very strong. England can afford to say, we're not joining the, the, the European Union because they know the bond with America is very, very strong. So the European Union, they can do whatever they want. Britain has a backbone. America got us. So we have to reach a point where African Americans are given the backbone here to stand up and say, no, you're not doing that. And then extend that help or connection to Black people in diaspora.
I agree totally, but you know what I also want? And I'm hoping when you're saying African Americans, I hope that you're including Native Africans, like Africans that have migrated to the US. Because African Americans, we can't do it alone. And it is my hope that all of the Blacks that are here, no matter where you're from, you are considered, if you're a descendant of African, you can be an African American, and it's your duty to work with us as well. Right? So it's not just Native Black Americans or Native African Americans fighting, but us all realizing that when you show up in a room, nobody knows you're from Africa or Jamaica until you tell them or until you speak. So we all should be working in this. It should be a collective effort of Blacks that are in America doing just what you said.
Absolutely correct. 100% correct. I like the concept of the founding fathers of African nations.
Mhm.
I don't like the direction they went, but I like the concept when they were fighting for freedom because when one country became independent, it helped the next country to gain independence. And that spiraled on until uh, Africa, the whole of Africa was free.
Mhm.
Where I think, and this is just me, where I think they messed up is to agree to say, let's go to Lancaster in Britain to sign to sign an independence declaration. No, I've just defeated you. Why should I come there to your country after defeating you to sign a declaration? No, you come here. The winner is the one who stays. The loser is the one who travels. Come here. So, so you know, so we are all fighting against. We are fighting to be recognized. We are fighting for our voices to be heard. So I agree with you that we need to work together regardless whether you are African American, whether you are Indian American, uh, voluntary immigrant, because the rights of people are rights of people. I don't even care even if you are you fighting from China for the recognition of black people in their culture.
Exactly.
You can be white as long as you know, it's authentic that you're fighting for the rights of black people and their culture. It's not because when we say fighting for the rights of black people, we're coming short. Fighting for the rights of black people to sell their culture, sell their tradition, sell the entrepreneurship skills. You know, we everything is sold. The world should see that we have something we're bringing to the table. Our voices cannot be, ignored anymore. Give us a voice.
But it needs to be a collective voice, right?
Good.
So when we go back and we think about civil rights movement, African Americans or Native Blacks went through that. But everybody that was an immigrant in this country benefited off the backs of the Native Black Americans. So it
Absolutely.
has to be a collective effort among no, we don't have time for division because you came here from Africa or you came here from a Caribbean island or you a black Indian, right? Because we know there are black Indians from India. No matter where you come from, if you're black, we're in this and we should be in this together. I plead with people often to just remember the struggles that Native Black Americans endured was a benefit for those who came as well. So we need everybody
Yes.
to fight this fight with us. And I thank you. I thank you. I thank you, friend. If you have any last thoughts as it pertains to the benefits of us building a community of supporters, a relationship with one another, no matter where you're from. If you are Black, it is time to stand in solidarity together, to understand each other, to work together, to do business together. It is really, it's been time. But now more than ever, we cannot afford to not be unified. We cannot afford to think that we can stand in singleness and accomplish a goal that needs to happen for the collective Black. So again, if you have any final thoughts, I want to give you that opportunity before we end.
My last thought is that is we fight for the leveled ground, we need to make sure that we bring in the spirit of Ubuntu,
Okay.
the spirit of unity.
Okay. So say that again. The spirit of
Unity.
okay, which was in say that again. Swahili,
Ubuntu. It's a Bantu,
Bantu.
yeah. Ubuntu, the spirit of unity, and understanding that I am because we are. It's only when you see the humanity in me that you're going to recognize me as a human being who deserves all the rights that other human beings enjoy. I can be poor, I can be rich, I can be disabled. I can see the humanity in me. Then, once we begin to see humanity in each other, then we'll begin to understand each other. Then we'll begin to learn about each person's journey, life journey. And once we understand each other's life journey, we can come to a common thing to say, we are one race, the human race, and we should treat each other as such.
I agree totally. That was a great ending to what needs to happen, and it is also to say that we're all depending upon one another, and we invite everybody to the party to help us, no matter what who you identify as. But what I do want to say is thank you very much for taking your time to spend with me on this Friday evening, because it's a Friday, and just to share your perspective and your ideas. And just even talking about how travel has allowed you to really expand your mind, which is something that I love to do. And I hope that others are doing the same when they travel. It's good to relax, but it's also even better when you can learn about the place and the people in which you are visiting. And more importantly, don't forget to visit Africa, an African country. Again, thank you for taking the time to listen to this conversation between my dear friend, Dr. S.A. And if nothing else, I hope that we can grow and glow together. I can learn from you, and you can learn from me, and together we can be better. Thank you. Be blessed.